Thanks so much for joining us on the Album of Record podcast. I'm Craig Lyndall, and I'll be joined by Andrew Schnitkey. Shortly, we discuss a new record by the band Fucked Up, as well as Primus and Coheed touring together. Finally, we talk about Aghori Mori May, which is the new and surprisingly good record by the Smashing Pumpkins. By the way, bring back Zeitgeist, bring back the Zwan record. Come on, Billy, do it. Like and subscribe. Thank you for joining us. Please tell a friend. Do all the nice things to help us make this thing grow. Here's the podcast. Welcome, everybody. How's it going, Andrew?
It's going pretty good, Craig. I'm a little tired today. I have a general philosophy in life that I like to try not to do weeknight concerts if possible. At my old age, they have a habit of catching up to me, but went to Primus and Coheed and Cambria last night, and so feeling a little tired, but otherwise feeling pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I know this about you. You like Primus, and you used to listen to Coheed quite a bit, but you know, this was you being a good friend going to this show, huh?
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine who really wanted to go, and we had talked about it, and he sort of ninja bought tickets, and he was like, hey, last week he was like, hey, you remember we have that concert on Tuesday? I was like, we do. But I'm glad I went. Primus was awesome. I mean, they just put on an unbelievable live show. I think that regardless of how anybody feels about Primus's music, I think they would enjoy a Primus show, especially if you have any appreciation for percussive, rhythmic things just bouncing off each other. To watch Les Claypool play live for a couple hours is just amazing. He just absolutely brings it.
They're at their point at the point in their career where you can. Sorry, we've got connection issues from the start. It's the kind of situation where you could take Primus for granted because they've been around so long and been doing it at a high level for so long.
Yeah, and they have actually like a pretty big bank of songs to choose from as well. And it was not really my favorite set list. It wasn't some of the Primus songs that I would have really liked to have heard weren't there. Winona's Big Brown Beaver, they typically close with that. They didn't close with it last night, which was a bit of a bummer, but I the combination, they play Jerry Was a Race Car Driver right into My Name Is Mud, and that sequence of those back to back, just the crowd just erupted for that. And I mean, it was just absolutely incredible. And I was really surprised that they had a shockingly large pit. It was pretty rowdy, and it was really cool to see that. I hadn't seen that big of a pit in a while, to be honest, and it did catch me off guard. I wasn't expecting that from a Primus show, but fans were into it. Yeah, it was a good time. It was like I said, it's just a really good show, and to hear, especially Les and Tim Alexander, the drummer of Primus, hear them playing off of each other is just really, really cool. Like, I mean, it's just phenomenal, the sounds that they create. And I was telling my buddy, I said, I feel a little bit bad for the guitarist. Like, you could be an incredible guitarist, but when you're playing with Primus, you're kind of just doing your thing off to the side. It's because so much of that sound is coming from the percussion between the drums and the bass. So, yeah, all in all, like, that was certainly a phenomenal show. Coheed was good. I'm not a super big Coheed fan in general. But they have a couple like really huge songs that like everybody knows, and of course the crowd really went nuts for those. But they had a hardcore following. Like, there was a very good crowd of people there just for Coheed, who knew every word to every song. And so they were good.
Yeah, Coheed's an interesting band. They're one that I've been listening to since the very beginning. I saw them in a very, very small club the Grog Shop in Cleveland back when they were first starting on their first album, and I've seen them pretty consistently over the years since. I've gone up and down with my fandom, but it's so strange to me because when they came out, you know, a lot of their stuff, I probably got their initial demos and things off of mp3.com. I mean, that's the vintage, the MySpace era, and they were pretty much considered like an emo band. They were in there with Thursday and Thrice and a lot of those bands, and I wouldn't really even think of them as an emo band anymore. They've kind of gone on to defy genre, to defy, you know, they're a rock band and they're a progressive rock band, but they've really carved out their own niche. I found the pairing of Coheed and Primus to be a little bit weird, but it's two bands that don't pair very well with any other band, so it kind of makes sense in a weird way.
I think because they're both progressive bands, they both have elements of prog in them. It kind of does make sense from that standpoint, but what they take from progressive music is a little bit different. Coheed, like, they sort of have like this really like heavy progressive sound. They, especially live, it was a really loud, heavy sound. Like I've already mentioned with Primus, it's a little bit more rhythmic in the percussive side of things. But I gotta say, like, Claudio, the singer for Coheed, looks exactly the same as he has always looked. Like, he looks like he has not aged one bit. He hasn't changed his hair, his mannerism. Like, he looks exactly the same as he did the first time I ever saw them perform on TV or on the internet, whatever it was. But it's kind of like one of those things, like, I probably would have never gone to see Coheed like on their own, but I'm glad I got to see them because they opened for Primus.
Yeah. Well, and they are progressive and they are heavy, but when you listen to the choruses that Claudio writes, like, a lot of them are might as well be power pop. It's just the oddest thing. Infectious sound. I love it. I love that band very much. Not as much as like their super fans probably, because, man, you want to talk about and you mentioned it, their super fans are hardcore. I think there are probably a lot of Coheed fans that are Coheed first and everybody else is trailing by a long shot afterwards.
Yeah, they definitely are one of those bands that has their niche, their following that's very specific to them. And they've earned it, you know, and they do it through the iconography, the whole, I forget what they have a word or a title for that whole like sequence of stories that they told.
The Amory Wars.
Yes. And so,
in their comic books and everything else.
Yeah. I mean, so they have a whole style or subculture to them in and of itself, which is really cool. Like, I love it when bands can just carve their own path that way, and they're not reliant on, you know, whatever the winds of the day are, whatever the trends are. Like, they've just got their path, they do their thing. And I think you're right, like they're this is sort of a outcast pairing of them and Primus. You know, I guess Primus is another band, like, who would Primus, you know, who are their peers? Who would they open for? Who should they have open for them? You know, there's not a lot of obvious connections there. And I think in that way, the pairing did work. And there was a decent amount of people that did file out after Coheed. But I think a lot of that could have been weather related as well, though, because it did start to rain towards the end of the Coheed set, and we were expecting a lot worse weather. We actually got really lucky with just a few sprinkles here and there. But like, literally, there was a huge storm. We were watching the radar on our phones. There's a huge storm, a big red line coming right at Columbus. And we're like, oh God, this is not going to be good. But then it literally like split downtown, and it went north and south of downtown. Like, even when we left, like when I drove, as soon as I got 3 minutes north of downtown, I just drove through torrential downpour. And it was like, wow, we got really, really lucky.
So that's cool. Are you ready? Are you going to do your poetry for
Oh
us?
yeah. Oh yeah. We got to do some new metal poetry. Today's offerings. So we'll start with this one. We've got "Wake me up inside, save me, call my name and save me from the dark. Wake me up, bid my blood to run. I can't wake up before I come undone. Save me from the nothing I've become." You got that one?
I do, but I forget the name of the band and the female singer.
Yep, you're on the
Um,
right path. I know you know it.
I saw
Evanescence.
them. I saw them at Louder
Evanescence.
Than Life a couple of years ago. It was surprisingly good to hear those big hits again. Even though, like, is there anybody who's a giant Evanescence fan? Is there enough material to be a
That's a good
giant fan, or
question.
is it just like a nostalgia thing at this point?
That's a good question. I the singer I believe is Amy Lee. Does that sound right?
Yep,
I think that's
yep.
right. You know, I think she certainly still has a pretty big you know recognizability factor to her. I mean, she was everywhere for a while there, like not just on Evanescence, but she was also singing guest parts on tons of stuff. But yeah, I don't. I like that's kind of interesting. I wouldn't have guessed actually that they were even still together. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think they got back together for those big festivals.
Okay,
Um, you know,
the
those
festival
festival
seems like the
paydays.
perfect place for them. Like they
Well,
maybe they
a band like Evanescence plays festivals. I've noticed lately Chevelle basically only shows up for festivals, and
yeah
they've got a perfect festival set.
yeah
They break out a couple of new songs and all the classics. They play the Red every single time, and it's a great festival band.
yeah. No, that makes sense. So we got Evanescence. Our second entry today. "I don't want to change the world. I just want to leave it colder. Light the fuse and burn it up. Take the path that leads to nowhere. All is lost again, but I'm not giving in. I will not bow. I will not break. I will shut the world away."
Hmm. This one's not coming
So
to
I'm
mind.
stumped on this one too. I don't know who this one is, and
Is there?
these don't say in here who they are. Uh,
I think you have to read it again.
so "I don't want to change the world. I just want to leave it colder. Light the fuse and burn it up. Take the path that leads to nowhere. All is lost again, but I'm not giving in. I will not bow. I will not break. I will shut the world away." That "I will not bow, I will not break" part sounds really familiar to me.
I don't think we're going to know this one. It's a band that I actually saw because Chevelle was opening up and I wanted to see Chevelle. So we went to Blossom Music Center. It's Breaking Benjamin.
Okay. I would not have gotten that off the top of my head, but
I
I
was
bet I
never a
would.
Breaking Benjamin guy. They put on a good
Yeah.
show, though, by the way,
Oh,
for what it's
wow.
worth.
Yeah. I feel like I would know that song if I heard it. That just something about the "I will not bow, I will not break" just feels
Yeah.
familiar to me. But there we go. That's
These
our
are my
new metal
favorite.
poetry.
It's almost more fun when we don't have the answer and you could just,
Yeah.
because how many times have you been listening to a podcast and you're just a listener and the host can't get the answer and you know it and you know
Yeah.
exactly what it is and you're just
Yeah.
screaming. So I feel good we gave people an opportunity to know something that we didn't know off the top of
All
our
the
heads.
especially all the hardcore Breaking Benjamin fans who listen to our
All right.
podcast.
So we're also going to talk about the brand new Smashing Pumpkins record, but before we get there, you're going to tell me about a band called Fucked Up that released a new album that they wrote and recorded live in a 24-hour period on YouTube.
Yeah, so this this one is
So first of all, tell me
interesting.
tell me about Fucked Up, because like you like them, you've talked about them a number of times over the years, but I've never jumped all the way in.
Yeah, so Fucked Up is a hardcore band out of Toronto. I call them a hardcore band. They're always listed as a hardcore band or a punk band, would take your pick. But like they sort of transcend that. This is one of the most innovative and inventive punk bands that have ever existed. They are meticulous with the way they write and record. They are a bunch of very interesting personalities that don't always get along together great within the band, which is always like it. Like, I like that they have the dynamic. Like, it's never been so frazzled that like the band was at risk of breaking up or anything like that. There hasn't been like these huge public blowouts, but like their last several albums, I don't know how many, probably their last like 4 or 5 albums have been recorded entirely separately, with each member just recording their own parts on their own and then sending it in. And then I think a lot of times, I think it's the drummer Jonah Falco who puts a lot of them together then. But anyways, they did something with their last album called One Day, where every member of the band had 24 hours to record their part. So they had I don't know who started it, like which member laid down their parts first, but then every member just had 24 hours to write and record their parts for it. And it was a really cool album because, so by definition, like in the things I've talked about, like Fucked Up are a very sprawling band. Like, they very expansive sound, a lot of songs that go in a lot of different directions. They've done sort of these, like, they've done an actual rock opera. They lots of really interesting things, but on One Day they really had to focus it in, and they put together really their most focused album probably ever. And it was really cool. And I don't know if I would say it's my favorite album of theirs, but I just thought it was really cool to hear them write and record in this way. And anyways, they've got another album coming out. They decided to basically do it again. They've got an album coming out on Friday called Another Day, which again, same concept, 24 hours, write and record your parts. But they decided to do something interesting and take on a challenge that I didn't know they were going to do. And I was so busy yesterday, and then I had that concert, so I wasn't really on social media as much. I wasn't looking at the websites that I usually look at as much. And so I totally missed that this was happening. But so we're recording this on Wednesday. Yes. So yesterday, Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, they started a live stream on YouTube. And they came into the studio together, first time as a band all together in, like I said, over a decade. And they came in and they said, we've got 24 hours. We're going to write, record, mix, produce our album, and put it out by 1 o'clock on Wednesday. And they did it. So I didn't know about it. I got an email today from them saying, hey, there's a new release on Bandcamp from Fucked Up. And I was like, what? So I went and clicked and looked to see what it was. And it was like, it's a new album. I was like, what is this? And it said written and recorded in 24 hours. And I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. Well, then I saw what the backstory to it was, and I went and I clicked on YouTube, and it was still live at that time. And I like rewound it back. I could only go 12 hours back, but I kind of went through, and it was so awesome to actually watch these guys. At that point, the material had been written, but they were tracking their parts, and I got to see all of them track their parts, whether it be Damien recording his vocals, Sandy doing her bass parts. I saw a little bit of Mikey doing a guitar solo. It was even just seeing how Mikey figured out the guitar solo and watching him sort of figure it out in real time, what he wanted to do with it was just awesome, because he's an amazing guitar player. Like, he's got like this ridiculous ability, like in real time, to process like 4 different guitar parts that he wants to track, and he can already hear it in his head how those 4 parts are going to play off each other. There's some really cool clips on YouTube of him showing how he loops parts together, which is really cool. You can find that stuff on YouTube if that stuff interests you. But yeah, it was just unbelievable. So I obviously have not had time to watch the full 24-hour live stream, but I'm hoping I can go back and watch a good portion of it, to sort of just see how this all came to be. But I did listen to the album, and it is surprisingly good for, again, like, because that's the thing is when you have to write, record, and produce in 24 hours, you have to have certain times where you just say it's just good enough, right? Like you can't fret over every aspect of every song. Like you just sort of have to be like, you know what, that's the part.
I think we should officially forevermore call this the reverse Chinese democracy.
There we go. In every single possible way, it is the reverse Chinese democracy.
We're not going to wait 3 years and bring Buckethead in for sessions.
Yeah. And change however many guitarists, drummers, bass players, all of it. But I would say the product is a lot better than Chinese democracy too. I will listen to this album, which is called, I have it right here, Who's Got the Time and a Half. I will listen to this a lot more than I ever have Chinese democracy, but that's neither here nor there.
So the other thing that we wanted to talk about today was something of a surprise record, at least to me, from Smashing Pumpkins. Aghori Mori May is a record that they kind of unleashed upon the world with very little notice, no singles. A lot of the chatter around it leading up to it was that this is the throwback record. This was them going back to their roots, at least as far as writing and recording. And I was very pleasantly surprised. 10 tracks, 45 minutes, essentially. The songs are bite-sized. I felt like I could understand them, and it's not a full-on throwback to the 90s for me in any way, shape, or form, but it's really good. I was pleasantly surprised. Now, you and I always talk offline or online, but not on the podcast, and you weren't totally blown away on your first listen, but you kind of came around on it.
Yeah, so I want to read, first of all, what Billy Corgan said about this album before it was out. He said, this is a direct quote, 10 songs, about 45 minutes, and then let the fans decide whether or not what we've done is what we set out to accomplish, whether we put ourselves back in that original position, whether we were able to go home again with this record. So on August 2nd, 2024, it'll be there for everyone to listen to. We're just going to put it out digitally. Of course, we're going to put it for sale, and that comes later, but we want to just put the record out. Then there was also, so that ends the Billy Corgan quote. There was also some preview videos that Smashing Pumpkins put on their YouTube page. And I think it was there. One of them, I'm pretty sure Billy specifically mentioned Siamese Dream and Melancholy, like wondering, can we go back to that sound, or saying something like, I always knew we could go back to that sound. So the reason I'm starting with all of this is because I really need to preface this because it was so heavily on my mind when I listened to this for the first time. I was listening for, are we going to get those fuzzy, that warm, fuzzy guitar sound, almost a shoegaze influence? Like, are we getting that Smashing Pumpkins back? And we didn't get that at all. That is not what this album is. And I would even say, other than a couple songs that I can hear them trying to do, like there's a song that tries to do some like Tonight Tonight kind of things with the strings. There's a song that kind of tries to do a little bit of the Disarm thing. There's a song that tries to do a 1979 kind of vibe. Like, so I hear that in this, I do. But I would say in general, the songwriting even to me does not ring true to that era of Smashing Pumpkins. So when I listened to the first time, I walked away with it feeling very, like I was happy to hear the guitars back. I was happy to hear Jimmy's drumming, front and center. Like I was happy about those things, but I felt like this was basically Zeitgeist Part 2 in a lot of ways, more so than a throwback to.
Which is not an insult coming from you and me.
Correct, because after we talked about it last week, a copy of Zeitgeist magically appeared in my email, and I listened to it for the first time in many, many years, and I was like, God, this is a good album, and it still pisses me off that Billy doesn't appreciate it. But anyway, we'll get into some Billy stuff here in a minute too. But so I'll say, when I first listened to it, though, it just wasn't what I was expecting, and I think if I would have heard this album without Billy Corgan putting those expectations in my head, my reaction would have been a lot more positive on first listen. Now, since then, I've listened to this album a ton in preparation for this episode and just in general, because I actually quite like this album a lot now. Once I got past that and said, okay, it's not that. But if we're talking a post Adore Smashing Pumpkins vibe, like, this one is right up there at the top. Like, to me, like Machina and Zeitgeist are probably like the top two for me personally in that realm, and this one fits right neatly with those albums. The guitar playing is incredibly heavy. Like, I mean, there are songs that, like, he is playing metal riffs at times. He's playing some stuff that almost has like 999 has like a breakdown that's almost Toolish, I would even say, a little bit. Like, I mean, it's a heavy album when this album goes heavy. He's got some softer moments, but the big thing is that's just so different about this is still that guitar tone is still very dry. It's very metal. It's a metal guitar tone that he's using, which to me is not what vintage Smashing Pumpkins are. And that's fine. It's his choice. This is Billy's band, his music. Who am I to tell him not to do that? You know, but those are just thoughts that are just running through my head as when I listened to this the first time. But now that I've gotten through it, I love how short this album is. Because again, Billy has a little bit of Axl Rose in him in this way. You know, he can be his own worst enemy when it comes to songwriting and wanting to over tweak things and make songs longer than they have to be, include songs that don't need to be on the album. We did an entire podcast episode about cutting Melancholy down to a single disc album. You know, so, and again, if you're a Smashing Pumpkins fan who feels differently and loves all that excess, that's great. I'm not telling you that you're wrong. I'm just saying, I think for most people in general, they would agree that there's a lot of bloat with Smashing Pumpkins, and this album has no real bloat. Like, it's very focused, very sharp, very short. It's an enjoyable listen. It's one of those ones I have no problem when I get to the end just running it right back. It flies by. It feels even faster than 43 minutes to me. Like, to me, it feels like a half-hour album. Like, it's really goes by really fast. And so in general, I would say I'm very positive on this album.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I haven't gotten to the point where I have it memorized. Every song sounds super familiar to me, but I can't match up the songs to the titles yet.
Well, okay. I want to go ahead.
Yeah, but like you, I love to listen to this thing from front to back. I like all the different ways that it moves. I think it's not formulaic. It doesn't sound like here's a clear verse, here's a clear chorus. So it still retains a lot of the complexity that Billy has embraced kind of in the second half of the Pumpkins' career. But at the end of it, I felt like it was, without being reductive and insulting, because I love it, I think it's bite-sized. I think it's digestible. Maybe that speaks to me and my more simplistic way of being a fan, but I feel like I don't have to work so hard to love this record. And I feel like with the last couple, you had to work really hard to comprehend these sprawling songs and these 3 discs, 33 songs. It's just really hard to make sense of it. It takes work. And as a fan, one of the things I always loved about the Pumpkins is, well, it was easy. It was easy. You hear those songs, and the second half of Siamese Dream is not simple. It's not facile, but at the same time, you felt like as a fan, you could listen to it a number of times and digest it and understand it. And I feel like by the time I'm done, quote unquote, done listening to this record, I will feel like an expert in this record. And I feel like I can become an expert in this record because it, at 10 songs and 45 minutes, and the way that it's constructed, it's approachable. And I don't know, maybe that just means that I'm a simpleton, but I think it's a good thing, and I think it's awesome. I hope this brings me back to Machina, Zeitgeist, and even the Zwan record to some degree.
Yeah.
This is the Songcraft out of Billy Corgan that I like, and I don't feel like he's repeating himself necessarily. I don't think he's ripping himself off or doing an impression of himself. This feels like new territory, new songs, new material, and I love it. I'm so happy to have it.
I think that Billy is selling this album short by trying even to talk about it in the context of early era Pumpkins, because I agree with you. Like, I think these are well-written songs, and I think this stands up on its own. It doesn't need to be compared to anything else. While this has some of the production quality and it sounds a little bit like those other albums we mentioned, I wouldn't say these are like rip-off songs of that. It's not it's not like retreading that territory. It's more of, for me, it's more about like the production and stuff. But the songs themselves here are all standalone. Like, they can all stand on their own feet. A couple, a couple little Billy Corgan gripes here too. The album title is funny to me because prior to the album coming out, on their YouTube page, this is Smashing Pumpkins, there is a YouTube video called How to Pronounce Aghori Mori May. And it's Billy Corgan saying how to pronounce it, Aghori Mori May. And he says it multiple times. I saw an interview with Billy the day the album came out, or maybe the day after, and the person interviewing him says, the new album, here to talk about the new album, Aghori Mori May, Billy Corgan. Billy, did I pronounce that right? And Billy goes, I guess that's just how they're pronouncing it. And it's like, you got to drop this like whole mystic thing, Billy. Like, you can't tell people how it's pronounced and then act like, well, it's those crazy kids, but it's a mystery how it's actually supposed to be pronounced. Like, this side of Billy Corgan drives me nuts sometimes. And again, it's like, he's too much of an artist. He's trying too hard with this stuff. And that goes to part of my problem with like some of these song titles too. Like, it does make it hard to remember which song is which. When you have songs like Sayomi, which Sighommmi, which I would not know how to pronounce except for the fact that I heard Billy pronounce it on that in that interview. And then Sicarus and Murnau, and even Eden, the first track, is not spelled the way you would expect Eden to be spelled. And they've been doing this for the album that's CYR, Seer or Sir, however, we talked about this last week. Like that, it's not like he has gone so far into this whole, this is all, and he even talks about it in the interview, like, well, the album title ties into this backstory legacy of Smashing Pumpkins, and it's a clue. I hope fans can figure it out. And you don't have to do it, Billy. You don't have to do all this. Like, your music is so good. Like, let the music speak for itself. Like, I miss the just the simple lyrical content of those early Pumpkins albums too. Like the Siamese Dream, Melancholy, like the stuff he's talking about on a song like 33, some of my favorite lyrics in any song ever. And like that style of lyric writing is not really here so much, a little bit. I think lyrically, I think Who Goes There is an interesting one. I think it's sort of, I'm not sure, but to me, it seems like he's almost talking about himself a little bit and like trying to understand what his fans in the media and people in general want from him, what's expected of Billy Corgan today, and how does he fit into society and things like that. Which so that I like that, the more introspective stuff than I do some of the stuff where he's talking about Lazari and all this like the cicada stuff, like it's stuff that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And maybe I'm just out on the Smashing Pumpkins lore. I don't mean to sound like I'm complaining overly about it. I've mentioned a million times, I'm not a lyrics first guy. The music is far more important to me. I can forgive bad lyrics pretty easily. I do it all the time. But I just wish that, like, to me, it still gives the impression that Billy's not comfortable with his status. Like, it's like, you are a rock music icon. You're one of the greatest guitarists who have ever lived, one of the greatest songwriters who has ever lived. You are an absolute musical genius. Like, you don't have to throw all this other stuff in there. Like, it's okay to just let your music speak for itself.
Yeah, he's unimpeachable if he would just allow himself to be.
Mm-hmm.
He's done enough. He doesn't owe any of us anything. He's done enough to cement his place. Everything that he's in the phase of his career now that everything that he does musically from this point forward is all bonus, because he's done enough that if he walked away and quit, like he's a legend.
Yeah.
He is a living legend. I think vocally he sounds really good on this record. I loved some of the vocal melodies that he ends up singing. I really haven't jumped into the lyrics so much at this point, but and I don't feel like there are not a lot of stadium rock sing-alongs going on here. It's not to that level. It's not anthemic to that degree, but this sounds like the art rock stadium band that we always want Smashing Pumpkins to be. I can hear this played in a basketball arena. I can hear it, and I can almost see the lights washing over the stage and doing all the dancing that we expect it to do when Smashing Pumpkins are at their absolute best. And so in a lot of ways, in from that respect, it does feel like a throwback. And I'm just happy. I'm happy for us. I'm happy for him. And I wish he could be happy for himself too. So,
yeah,
but that's fine. Like, you're not going to change him at this point. He's going to be the complex character that he is. He's maybe the chip on his shoulder that I think should have been gone by now is part of what makes him him.
yeah.
But like, dude, you're good enough. You're good enough. You've been great for a really long time. You don't owe anybody anything. So just own it. Own it. And like, far be it, like, for me to tell Billy Corgan to just own it. Like, he needs my clearance. Like, he needs another hole in the head.
Well, maybe he does, in order to not take this one offline at some point too, if the fans don't like this as much as he hopes they do. But I don't think he has to.
But I think they do. I think it was voted best new music last week, and Billboard, and I think everybody's it's been very well received to have it.
I think Billy had an enlightening exchange in one of the interviews I saw with him. I watched probably 2 or 3 of them. I don't remember which one this was. So, but anyways, he said I don't know. They were talking about the fact that there wasn't a single on this. They didn't even put out a song before the album, and I appreciated that. He talked about he's like, I wanted the fans to just hear it as an album. We realized in today's day and age, like, he's like, it doesn't matter. Like, just put the album out and let them consume it. And I love that. Like, that to me, that's the best way. I had so much more hype for this album because they just said, hey, there's an album coming out next week. It's done. You're not going to get to hear anything yet, but next week. Like, I hate these. Like, I keep a list of upcoming albums that I'm looking forward to. And when I've got stuff already out into October, it's like, come on, like, just put the album out. If it's done, why are we waiting till October? But anyways, I digress there. The enlightening part of the
let me interrupt you real quick, because that's something you and I talk about all the time. where I get the business reasons why they pre-release 4 or 5 songs from these records so that they can get them listened to for the 2, 3, 4 months leading up to the release of a record. But I shared with you I think it's 8 songs from a band that I like called the Wild Rivers. Um, the band doesn't really matter. I don't expect you to like that one, and I don't expect a lot of people who listen to this to like that record. But they released, I think, 4 or 5 of the songs on the 8-song disc pre-release. So by the time it was actually released, it was kind of like, well, all right, I've already heard the majority of this record, it feels like.
That was the Cloud Nothings experience for me too. Like they put out so many songs from Final Summer that when I listened to the album, it didn't feel all that new to me. And I think that has hurt it in how much I've re-listened to it. I think I like it more than the amount of times I've listened to it, because it's like I've listened to so many of those songs so many times for so many months prior to that album coming out. But anyways, I will get back to my original point on the enlightening part of Billy's interview. He was saying, he's like, imagine we had 2 songs. One was a perfectly great song, like just the best song ever written, but it's sort of similar to our old stuff. But then I've got another song that's maybe 90% of there. So it's not as good, but it treads a new water in a new direction. Which direction should we go with? And it was hilarious because you could tell the person interviewing was about to say, well, the perfect better song, like go with the better song. The song is the song, go with the better song. And he's like, obviously it's the go in the new direction way. And I was like, that is so enlightening, because that's just how Billy's brain works. And that's why you can have an album like this that he can say, well, it's 90% of this old stuff, but it's treading in this new direction. And, we can split hairs over how much of that old stuff is really actually here. But I just thought that was so interesting to hear him talk about that way, because I think so many people would say, and maybe even myself included, I'm not sure, like there's a part of me that says, if you got better songs, like go with the best song, put the best songs out. But I think Pearl Jam has talked about this at one point around the Vitalogy era, the No Code era, like being careful about how good of songs they put out. That they were almost like they didn't want the albums to be too big, because this was in that whole anti-rock star era, and that's where Billy Corgan comes out of too. So it's not all that surprising that he would sort of think that same way about some of this stuff. But we've talked a lot about this in terms of the past, and again, I would say that's largely Billy's fault, because he told us to listen to it that way. But in many ways, I do feel some parallels to this to Dark Matter. I think this year we really had a couple very strong return to form albums from these bands that. And I think we may have even talked about it last week when we talked about our anticipation for this Smashing Pumpkins album, like hoping that Billy could do what Pearl Jam did with Dark Matter. And I think largely he has. I think this largely is a return to form. Like this is really great guitar rock. Like, and that's well, something.
Let's talk about that for a second too, because part of the not hyping it up and not giving us 7 media cycles ahead of the record, we didn't get any of those tropes. Like this is the heaviest record we've made in years. This is the most guitar-based record we've made in years. The fans of our first 2 records are going to love this one the most. We didn't get a lot of that chatter. That and you and I kind of rolled our eyes a little bit, as much as we loved Dark Matter and as much as we felt it was a return to form. Like, this is the best material of our career. Is like, for sports fans, that's the best shape of his life at age 34 that you get on a baseball or a football field. And it's like, don't sing it, bring it. If Billy Corgan is a big wrestling guy, so let's use a wrestling trope. Don't sing it, bring it. Don't just talk about it. Just let us hear it, and we'll judge for ourselves. And sometimes you're going to hit, and sometimes you're not. You're going to miss, especially when you talk too much ahead of time.
Not only is not to digress from your point, but not only is Billy Corgan a big wrestling fan, he actually owns a wrestling company. I don't remember the name of it. But in one of the interviews I saw, the guy actually asked him some wrestling questions, and like, yeah, he was just talking about the different guys, and like, he worked with it's a Canadian wrestling company.
It's the National Wrestling Alliance.
There you go. And is that NWA?
Yeah.
I think he's mentioned that Bret Hart, I think, maybe had something to do with it back in the day. But anyways, neither here nor there.
It was actually U.S. based, Midwest, but yeah,
I could have sworn that then maybe.
I don't know. I'm reading Wikipedia. What do I know?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm confusing. As somebody who doesn't pay attention to wrestling at all, maybe I'm just confusing different things I heard. But I suppose we're getting off of the point here, anyways. But,
yeah.
Anyways, I don't know. I just I don't know where this album is going to sit like with me long term. I don't know. It's way too early for me to say, is this something I'm going to be listening to 5 years from now? I hope so. I hope it has that longevity.
Well, I certainly think a couple of these tracks will get they've already gotten the favorite nod on Spotify. They'll come up in playlists. I do feel like I could pull out a couple of these songs and put them on playlists for running or whatever else. They really hit. So anytime you can get some additional songs in what I would consider the all-time catalog, but that's what I wanted to talk about next is I've been kind of spying some of the Smashing Pumpkins set lists. They're on tour. They played a show as recently as August 5th, 2 days ago, and they're not playing any of these new songs. And that's also a big departure from what Pearl Jam decided to do with Dark Matter, where they said, hey, look, we're going to play three to five of these songs. And we want you to learn them. We want you to know them. And we expect to hear them. And at least so far, and maybe that'll change as they continue to rack up shows. But to this point, it seems like they're not really playing the songs yet.
So Billy did talk about this in one of the interviews I saw as well, because they asked him about that. And he said they did not want to play any of the songs before the album was out. Because again, the whole idea was to let people hear the album. And then they said, oh, so are you going to start playing them? And he basically said, no, not yet, that they're still workshopping them. So, I kind of get the impression this album came together really quickly. That's sort of the impression that I get. And I think even though these things, I think for a lot of people might think, well, if you wrote and record the song, what do you have to figure out to play it live? But I don't think people understand a lot of times the complexity of the difference in the way you record an album versus perform songs live. Even things like the guitar tone, certain things you can do to get a tone in a studio isn't going to be able to be replicated live. When you put 5 different guitar parts down on a song to create a certain sound, you're not going to have 5 guitar players out there. You have to figure out how are we going to maximize, what parts are we going to do to get the most out of having just 2 guitarists out there. In the case of the bass player, Billy did all the bass on this album. So you got a bass player that needs to learn the songs. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's really not that simple. And plus, a lot of these songs were written so long ago that even if this did come together quickly, we're still talking months since these songs were probably recorded. And so, in a couple months' time, it's pretty easy to forget even things you've written. Like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I can noodle around with something and come up with like something I really enjoy playing that I wrote on guitar. And if I don't play it for a week and then I come back, I like kind of forget it. You're like, well, wait, how did that go exactly? Even the rhythmic part of it, not necessarily the notes, but like what was the strum pattern for it? Even like can be off. So I get it. Like it does take practice. It does take work. But I do think that we'll start hearing some of these songs live pretty soon.
And guess what, though? On the 5th, they did play something from Zeitgeist.
Did they really?
Doomsday Clock.
Oh, wow. All right.
So, maybe Billy's coming around a little bit.
God,
It sure would be nice to have that one on streaming, to have that one available. The Zwan record. This is officially our call, by the way. This is our call to Billy Corgan, for as little as it means coming from us, to bring back those records
yes.
and get them on streaming. Let us enjoy them. You're at the point in your career now where, as we said, you're a legend and you're minted. Stop listening to the haters. Let the people who love that stuff love it. And if you're playing Doomsday Clock, it should be on Spotify for us.
I think, if you have some newer fans, like, there's got to be people who be like, what is this song even? Doomsday Clock. Like, how do I find it? How do I listen to it? And it's like, sorry, you can't. But I just want to sort of summarize and put a bow on this and say, so in this episode, we have asked Billy to write better lyrics. Maybe
you asked him to write better lyrics. I don't really care. Go ahead.
What else? Stop using all the mystic imagery and stuff. Cut that stuff out. Release Zeitgeist. Be more content with his stat. All right, I just want to make sure
being a legend, man.
We're really telling Billy how to live his life here in this episode,
but it's all love. We're saying it as friends, as admirers, as people who want the very best for him, and we want him to enjoy it, and that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, at this point in my life, if I didn't care about Smashing Pumpkins, if I didn't care about Billy Corgan, I wouldn't even be giving these albums a singular listen. I'd just be out on them. The fact that we're here nitpicking tiny little things on an album that overall I think is quite good and exceeded my post initial expectations. I none of this would be happening if I was serious about any of this stuff and thinking that Billy needs to change or do anything different. Like, just keep doing you, Billy. I very, very much appreciate this album. I'm happy to have it, and it's very good. Like, that's just the bottom line. It's just another really good album in a year just absolutely stockpiled with great albums. That's getting to the point where it's hard to remember to listen to everything that I love from this year. Like, this is throw another one on the pile.
Yeah, this has been kind of an uneven year, and maybe a little bit strange in how much it's been all over the map. But you're right. And we're in August now, and I start to look at all the different records that I've been at least momentarily obsessed with throughout the year. It's shaping up to be a really strong year. But that top 5 or top 10 or whatever it is that we end up doing is going to look wacky.
Yeah.
Because it's just all over the map.
Yeah.
I think there have been certain years where you and I have looked at each other and said, oh my God, this was the year of heavy music, or this was the year of whatever. But this is the year where we got Dark Matter, we got Aghori Mori May, and we got the heavy record,
Knocked
Loose. Just so many things that cover so many different sonic levels, different genres, and all really good.
And for, I mean, like, I look at even like throwing in stuff for me, Meat Bodies, which is totally different from anything else we have mentioned. See You Space Cowboy is up there for me. Millie, really great. Dive, really great shoegaze stuff. Vampire Weekend, which is totally left field from any of these other things I've talked about. Like,
for me, Waxahachie.
Yeah, another one.
And MJ Lenderman's record coming out soon,
which you can already put in there for yourself. So,
pretty much,
But so it's a super eclectic year, and it's been exciting. And like, I still think about the fact, we've still got probably December. You usually don't get much in December, but we've still got a lot of September, October, November to go yet. So we still got potential for some really exciting stuff. I've got Jerry Cantrell's got an album coming out this year, which I'm excited about, of course.
I'm going to see him next week.
Regional Justice Center just announced they're putting out an album. That's a hardcore band that is by the singer of Military Gun. He has the project. I'm trying to think. There's a couple other things I've got, that I'm really excited for this year. So it's been a good year.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we kind of covered the waterfront in this episode.
Yeah.
Is there anything else for the good of the order, Andrew?
I don't think so. I think this pretty much covers it. We didn't necessarily go song by song and in as deep as we did with, maybe our Dark Matter review. But I'll just say for myself, some of the standout songs for me are 999 for sure. That's probably my favorite song. Sicarus, I don't know how you pronounce it. That one I have up there. Who Goes There, I think is really good. Pentagrams as well. Those are probably my favorite songs early on.
Yeah, I agree with all those. I had the first two, Eden and Pentagrams.
Eden's really good too.
Checked, and 999 is also checked for me.
Yeah,
and there will be more by the time I'm done. But like I said, I'm still trying to digest this thing. I've listened to it a couple of times when I'm running, or I haven't really listened to it where I was staring at the track list.
Yeah,
I was always enjoying it while I'm doing something else, and just really enjoying the entire journey.
Yeah, that does always make it hard.
It's kind of eye-rolly for me to even call an album a journey, but like that, the great ones feel like that to me. I like it.
Yeah, I do very much miss the feeling of, when I was a kid, you'd buy the CD, and you'd put the CD in and you'd pull the booklet out and, just follow along, reading lyrics and liner notes as you go. I do miss that experience because even with like my vinyl, most of the vinyl I get comes after the album's already streaming. Like very rarely do pre-orders get here before the actual streaming date. So, and like even that, like I pre-ordered the new Fucked Up album Another Day on vinyl, but according to tracking, it's not going to get here till Monday, and it'll be out Friday. So I've already listened to it a ton before I even get it. But it is what it is. That's whatever.
Well, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Please tell a friend, like the channel, subscribe to the podcast, do all the things that help us. We've seen such a great response to this podcast in under a year since we've started it. We love doing it, so we're going to keep doing it no matter what. But having that validation just means the world to us. So thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time. It's been the Album of Record podcast.